Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside Gaming. Today we're reviewing Rad, which has an easy tagline that I want. What, Rad is rad. It's a rad game. I'm not gonna do it.
It's rad.
She did it. Well, I'm Lawrence. This is Alana, and Caden's over there dialing in from Mars. Hey, Caden.
Heyo.
So yeah, let's dig right in. This is a roguelike from Double Fine. We all played the game to varying degrees. I guess first of all, maybe we should just put down a little groundwork here. How much we played this game and what our experience with roguelikes is in general. So I played this, I want to say about 12 to 15 hours. I haven't beaten it, because that's typically when I can finally, dump a roguelike in an open grave and walk away proud and happy. But that's kind of where I'm at. And as far as my roguelike history, I played a lot of them, but not like the real super core ones. So put a lot of time into Binding of Isaac, played Dead Cells a lot. So I kind of I dabble in kind of the upper tier. I'm not down there with the Eldritch Terrors of roguelikes. So, Alana, how about you? What is your experience here?
Well, I would have said that I played about 5 hours, but I got to World 3, so I don't know if I'm right.
That's not bad, as far as I can tell.
I think I played about 5 hours, and my experience with roguelikes is middling. I'll play most of them, but never finish any of them.
Got it.
So.
All right, Caden, how about you? How much time did you put in this game, and what's your experience with roguelikes in general?
I played about 6 hours, and I also got to Stage 3, World 3, whatever it is, and I love roguelikes. I've been playing a lot of Enter the Gungeon, Dead Cells, Rogue Legacy, Binding of Isaac, all that nonsense.
Okay. Do you go way back, like Sheer and the Wanderer and stuff like that?
Not that far back, but I did play a lot of Doom roguelike because it's just awesome.
There's a Doom roguelike?
There's a Doom roguelike?
Oh, yeah.
Well, what?
Okay. We'll table that one for now.
I want that.
I'm gonna need to hear more about that later. But first off, so to me, and maybe you guys can kind of contradict me on this, this game felt super like Binding of Isaac to me, which is to say, herp derp, it's a roguelike. But what I mean by that is first of all, it's mutation based, which Binding of Isaac was very much that. And it has two kinds of currencies. It's got money and keys, and they function almost exactly the same way. You find merchants to spend your tapes, which are your money. You find chests that you open with floppies, which are your keys.
If you hadn't noticed, this is like 80s, 90s themed. The whole
yes.
game.
Sorry. That is the wrapper that's around all of this. It's got super 80s music, super 80s characters. Even the world is sort of very trauma 80s of radiation's awesome. And it's not going to actually kill people or give them cancer. It's just going to make them sprout a third arm, and that's cool. The game takes place in this post-apocalyptic version of, I guess now, where they refer to the 80s as this progenitor race.
It's like the way that Fallout is in the future, but it's still
trapped in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. So you'll find little lore dumps about the VHS clan fighting the Betamax clan, and yeah, it's super on the nose. But I guess we can talk a little bit more about the presentation and the themes about stuff later. I'm just super into the mechanics of the game. So yeah, to me, very Binding of Isaac, except that you don't start with a ranged attack, which you super need, and I'll get into that in a minute, but that's kind of the difference here. It's a melee start Binding of Isaac, and the sooner you get a ranged attack, the better. One big difference, I think, from Binding is that it has a leveling system. So when you fight enemies, you fill this experience bar at the top. When you level up, you get a random mutation. And those can be anything from a new attack to a modifier on an existing attack, something that maybe nullifies different kinds of damage. So that's kind of neat.
And I think every time that I found one of these, I liked it because I was always excited. Every time that it pops up and tells me what I've got and it's new and I haven't heard of it before, I'm like, cool!
Yeah. And they always accompany pretty vast visual changes to your character. Again, kind of Binding of Isaac-y. But, they range from everything. So you can get a snake head where you can chomp dudes. Your arm can turn into a dude who's holding your weapon, so you get more range, and then he can just freak out, so you get a super attack. Your head can turn into a flaming skull, like Ghost Rider, that you then shoot at enemies and can blow up. There's a lot of very inventive mutations. So I appreciated that part of it. I don't know, Caden, how did you feel about the core mechanics and basically the rule set of the game?
I actually didn't really like the whole leveling up to getting mutation thing. I would have preferred them to be actual rewards. Again, Binding of Isaac type of thing where you actually go around and you find them, and you can find them in the game, but I didn't feel the leveling up was so necessary. It was just kind of there.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
It's a little gated. So in a given stage, basically the game is separated into stages. Each stage has 2 levels. At the end of every stage is a big ass boss. And there's only so many enemies. There aren't infinite enemies, so you're only ever going to get so many levels in a stage. I think the trade-off there is whether or not you want to hang around in a stage and try to find all the enemies to get one more mutation, or just move on. And that's pretty classic roguelike decision making. Do I like explore more and subject myself to maybe more dangers just to get the potential of an upgrade, or do I just move on?
Yeah, and it is very, very branching, and I felt myself get lost sometimes. So there is a decision to be made there. There are things to deter you from wanting to explore because it's a twisty minefield in some of those levels.
So the weird thing is too that a lot of roguelikes typically have a timing mechanic. Binding, you could only get to certain stages if you cleared the earlier ones fast enough. With Dead Cells, there were doors that were time gated, and if you played fast enough, you could actually get in there. I don't think that exists in this game, which is kind of weird. Usually they want to put a fire under you in one way or another, some kind of timer to make it so you can't just leisurely explore and pick up items and like double back to get health. Usually they try to squeeze you in some kind of way. There are multiple endings, so maybe that is time-based. Maybe that's more related to the path you take through these stages. I'm not sure. It's just interesting that there are a couple of things that make it seem like this game is a little softer than most roguelikes. Specifically, at the beginning in the first couple of stages, all the mutations you get are beneficial, no matter what.
Yeah.
So you can just grab everything.
It's not until stage 3 that stuff starts having a positive and a negative, basically.
Yeah, or it's like a die roll. So yeah, you get mutations from these giant purple skulls, which is kind of neat. And
it's like you're summoning a demon when you encounter them. It's
you like
all the
shoot
design is
radiation
cool.
beams out of your head.
Yeah,
The design is super, super cool. But you're relatively assured that they're all going to be good, so you might as well get it. Starting in stage 3, though, there are these meteors that will inflict you with negative status effects. Like the one specifically I got made everything really red, so it was really hard to tell where the bullets were and things like that. Kind of neat. But they also introduced these like cracked or damaged skulls, which can give you a positive one, or it can nullify one you already have.
Yeah.
So I had like a boomerang arm that I could throw out. It looks really cool. But when I got that, it just turned into a limp little like mutated dangly arm that didn't do anything. But you can remove those debuffs with items you find in shops. Yeah, it's a roguelike, so.
There are options.
Yeah, I think the rule set hangs together pretty well. I think
It's easy to understand.
yes.
And I feel like almost anyone could pick this up and play it and understand it immediately.
I think that's true. I think you can get started. I do think that there are some mechanics that are kind of under the surface that they could have done a lot better job explaining.
Sure.
But I'm of two minds on that, because it is a roguelike, and part of the idea is that they just slap you around until you figure it out.
Yeah.
So let's get into that a little bit. Well, before that, Caden, did you have any notes like on the basic gameplay mechanics or anything?
As far as everything's concerned, it's a simple roguelike. There's really nothing new here, like we've already kind of talked about. This is Binding of Isaac adjacent.
Yeah.
And it's all right. I mean, it does its job very well. It feels good to play.
Very well said. So let's get into the balance of it. Basically, how tuned is it? What does it feel like? I found that it's weird that it starts you with just a melee weapon, because having a ranged attack is super vital after stage 1. So it's very weird. In stage 1, basically everything you hit gets hit stunned. So as long as you hit it before it hits you, you can just combo it until it's dead. And then the only issue there is really things attacking you in the back. When stage 2 starts, suddenly that stops happening. You fight bigger monsters that don't get hit stunned, so then you have to watch when they're going to attack you, dodge roll out, and all that stuff. So it makes having a ranged attack by the time you get to stage 2 nearly vital. I can see somebody, just like straight Dark Soulsing it and like rolling at the perfect time and attacking everything.
I think you'd probably end up running away a lot.
Yeah, but it's a roguelike. Why would you do that? Like the entire game of roguelikes is being as safe as possible so you don't take stacking damage that rolls through and then you die 45 minutes into your run and say fuck it all and then toss your computer out the window. I don't know, Kaden, do you have similar thoughts about the balance? Because it was strange to me that it is so melee focused at the beginning.
I 100% re-rolled every time I got to stage 2 without a distanced weapon of any kind. It's just, there's no point to it. So I'd go in and I'd be like, okay, I beat stage 1. Okay, I don't have anything that's any kind of distance, no flaming head to throw, no boomerang arm, no nothing. It's like, all right, I'm just gonna start over. It's just easier that way. It almost guarantees you're gonna die very quickly in stage 2 without something to keep you away from enemies. Mm-hmm. So it's a little disappointing there, and it feels like it was a big oversight.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I mean, I think to some degree with every roguelike, you eventually develop this idea in your head about what you need to succeed. And to be frank, that's every roguelike, right? You just keep playing until you get that magic, perfect combo of upgrades that just nullify the difficulty of the game.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that, in that there was one time where I got a ranged attack in level 1 or in stage 1, and I was like, oh, everything's easy now.
Yeah.
But it did take me re-rolling repeatedly and dying repeatedly in later levels to get to that point. And I think that's kind of the excitement that you get from playing a roguelike.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think in these cases with the issues that, well, issues is a strong word, but some of this analysis, it's like, well, that's just a roguelike. And I'm fine with that. There are some other things that are a little off though. So unlike, say, Dead Cells or Binding of Isaac, I found that the powers and upgrades you get, the mutations, don't really combine mutually. You'll get a power, and that power is bound to a button, and it's on a cooldown, and that's kind of it. It's not like you can mix Flaming Head with Boomerang Arm. They're just two different things you use.
Yeah.
You can get mutations that fundamentally upgrade your character and cross over to that, like adding range to ranged attacks, or upping your crit rate, or like vampiric attacks that steal health. Those things just kind of spread over everything. But in something like Dead Cells, like you can combine properties of multiple weapons to have a greater constructive benefit. Whereas in this game, I feel like it's just you're mashing every cooldown, and hopefully those cooldowns are good. What do you guys feel about like the way that mutations interact as you level up and get more of them?
I actually liked a lot of how Enter the Gungeon did this with like synergies and everything like that. And there is no synergy in anything. You're completely right. There's no like, oh, I have a fire ability here and I have a fire weapon. Now they're like super powerful and they combine to be some super mega fire something. It's just like, it's just, you can walk in fire and now you also throw fire, but they're not the same ability and they don't help each other.
I think my take from that is that I'm fine with it. And like Caden is saying, there are plenty of things that they could have done to make it smarter, but this really does feel to me a little bit like Baby's first roguelike, where I feel like it is very simple. It's pretty quick to get through. It didn't feel that complicated to me, so I think that I'm okay with them not taking those extra steps in favor of it being just pretty and silly and having an awesome design. So I agree that it definitely could have been smarter. And if you play a lot of roguelikes, you'll feel like something is missing. But I almost want to tell people who don't play roguelikes to try this one first.
That makes sense. I actually did. There was one thing I noticed is like I got this upgrade as like a gas cloud that slows down enemies, and then if I hit it with fire, it would ignite it, and then there would be a little pile of fire. Except that like all the enemies move so fast that they never stayed in the fire long enough to take damage. So. There are a couple of things that I do wish they did straight up tell you. So there are some fundamental progression mechanics in the game. Most roguelikes have these. It's like, here's how we're gonna unlock new items that might appear in the store. Like there's always gonna be a random element. You just get XP whenever you die, fills up a meter, you level up, and then you unlock new items. Pretty simple, that makes sense. The one thing I wish they did tell you about was, you have to spend money in the store to upgrade the store. They don't tell you that. Again, roguelike, maybe that's part of it, but once I saw that tip in a loading screen, then I just started buying all the items from the store whenever I could, because I had the tapes for it, so why not? And then eventually did upgrade, and now it's giving me better items. So, little thing there. Also the bank, like if you deposit enough tapes into it, apparently it upgrades too somehow. I guess you can store floppies at some point, but the game didn't say that. I had to wait to get the right loading screen.
I mean, there is no tutorial, so.
Which, to your point, it doesn't really need. It's, here you go, here's your roll, here's your attack, here's your jumping attack, go have fun.
XA, that's it, you got it.
You can ground pound with Y.
That is true.
But, whatever, who cares. Okay, so, yeah, let's move on to the controls now, which kind of to what we were talking about. They're simple, but I have a few, I guess, tiny little things that I noticed.
I think I kind of do too.
Yeah. So for me, one thing I noticed is that one of the reasons that ranged is invaluable is because if you're meleeing somebody, there can be these like sparkly hit effects that cover up the enemies. You can't see what they're doing. And if they're about to hit you, you kind of need to know that. Also, like later on in the game, when you start killing enemies, they'll leave a hazard where they die, whether it's like toxic sludge or fire. And the explosion of them dying covers that up. So unless you know what's happening, you'll likely just stand in it and then take damage before you can even figure out what's going on. Roguelike, maybe some of those things you just got to figure out. Yeah. It also just took me forever to get used to dodge being on left bumper. I guess I've been playing a lot of Sekiro where like right bumper is the don't kill me button, so I kept hitting right bumper a lot.
Yeah, I was okay with that. I think that could just be that you used to something
think
different.
so, yeah.
But I actually, most of the issues that I had with controls were animation based. So I would not realize that I had properly killed something because I was still in an animation and it was covering them up or something like that. I felt like a lot of it was that the animations last a long time because the game is very stylish and it looks cool, but it means that you're not getting that instant feedback that you kind of need to survive to know what's happening in the environment around you. And that happened to me kind of repeatedly, where I didn't understand the feedback that it was giving me because it was favoring looking pretty instead.
Yeah, that's the other thing that we can get into in a minute with the presentation, but each level has such a wildly different neon color palette that it's kind of hard to train your eyeballs to see what hazards you need to watch out for. So when it's at night and everything's like purple and blue, enemies just look different. And I found myself getting hit by things that I just my brain didn't see coming because the color palette had shifted.
Yeah.
So it looks pretty, but it's interesting to note that there is a kind of a gameplay backlash on that. I don't know, Caden, how did you feel just playing the game? How were the controls for you?
One of the things that I noticed is when you jump, you don't leave that magical trail of plants behind you.
Yeah.
So, and when you walk along that magical trail of plants, you actually move faster. So I stopped jumping just so I could have those faster paths back to where I wanted to go. But then it's just, jumping helps in dodging some of those big attacks or, getting around certain enemies or actually platforming because it is this isometric 3D kind of whole thing. And it wants you to jump. There's even abilities it gives you to, make those bigger jumps, and some give you like a big inflated head so you float. None of those end up being super beneficial because you just end up wanting to walk around because it's way faster for movement, and keeping up that movement speed is super valuable in any roguelike to, get around certain enemies, and maybe something will surprise you and you need to move faster. So trying to keep those plant areas as wide as possible is beneficial, but they want you to jump.
Yeah, the speed boost mechanic was kind of confusing to me because it did feel like I was going faster when I was running through my plant path, but I think you get a little speed boost every time you kill an enemy too. Because whenever I kill an enemy and the DNA started flying to me, then I would just take off real fast for a little bit. That mechanic wasn't really explained either, so I'm confused about what your ground speed is. It would matter more if there were a global timer. There might be. Again, I don't know.
I didn't see one.
Yeah, they didn't make it explicit, but then again, a lot of this game is not explicit. Roguelike, I'm gonna keep coming back to that. So I want to be clear, most of the things I think we're bringing up, I wouldn't really classify as outright negatives. More just observations to be aware of.
I kind of agree, is that I like this game. And we can talk about nitpicks, I think, and that's kind of what we're doing.
A little bit, yeah.
As a whole, I really like this game. So it's just the minor things that you see that are wrong with what is a solid foundation, ultimately.
And speaking of finally dumping a load of praise on this game, the presentation is awesome.
It's amazing.
Or radical. So it's called rad because it's about radiation. I don't know if that didn't click for me until I actually started playing the game. But yeah, it's 80s as hell. It's all trapper keepers and kids with band-aids on their noses and puffy jackets and skateboard helmets and stuff. It's great. The music is awesome.
Yeah, I just mentioned to Lawrence before we started recording that I felt like a lot of the bass tracks were supposed to be rip-offs of really popular songs because it kept happening. And it kept being why do I recognize that bass line? Lawrence agrees.
They're 100% referential.
Yeah.
There is a Girls on Film tasty bass lick in there, and I'm that's just Girls on Film.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and they disguise it and recreate it, and a lot of it's very synthy. And I just looking at everything, every single one of the worlds that I went to, even your hub world, and the way that everything sounds, I was always just very happy looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 100% that sort of precocious young 80s kid out to right the wrongs of a crazy adult civilization kind of deal. And yeah, it is that take of kind of quality, what if radiation wasn't bad but actually really cool. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the world that you run around in now. And visually, in addition to it having this crazy neon color palette, some of the visuals in this game are great. Whenever you open the temple at the end of every level to kind of move on towards the boss or the fight, it sort of sprouts up with greenery because that's what you're doing. You're what do they call it? A reconstructor or something like that?
Yeah.
You're one of a special race of people that can actually breathe life back into the world. So yeah, you leave this trail of flowers and grass wherever you walk, and then when you hit these nodes, it just explodes into lush greenery, and it looks great. Mm-hmm. I never got tired of looking at it. I did get it's funny. It's two modes. Whenever I'm in a fight, I'm not seeing any of that. I'm just trying to stay alive.
Absolutely.
But when I'm running from place to place, it does make that downtime really pleasant of these nice visuals and great music. Mm-hmm. Caden, how did you feel about it?
The game is super aesthetically pleasing. It's as 80s as you could possibly get. The music is... I just left it open again at some point just to listen to the opening track that's there is so awesome.
Yeah.
But to a point that you made earlier, sometimes the presentation gets in the way of everything else. The big explosions and everything like that, it's so overblown that you don't know what's going on in front of you. And it's key to actually have that visual information when playing a roguelike because every step matters. That said, it's super 80s, it's really referential, it's really fun, and it's great to look at. And when you just have a moment to sit there and appreciate it, it's worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up references. There's legit Namco stuff in this. It has Pac-Man and Galaga, literally Pac-Man and Galaga, which I didn't expect. I guess maybe there's some corporate handshake going on there,
Guess
but
so.
it's got Pac-Man sound effects, which always sound great. And you can even get an upgrade that's like the little ship from Galio that follows you around and blasts things. Or is it Galaxian? Oh Christ, somebody's gonna light me up over that one. But
There's also this announcer guy.
oh yes,
Who I actually really liked, even though he scared me at first. Who's just like,
pause.
yeah, most things you do, he will commentate, or not most actually. It's just major functions, I think.
It's menus. He narrates every menu you go into,
Yeah.
and then he's like watching and commentating on you. But yeah, every time you beat a boss, he's like, "You are rad." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
just
"I know."
like that. You
But-
sound just like him.
But there's a lot of different variations of that read that are funny. Like it's amazing to me how somebody can just say one word and have it be funny. So sometimes he'll really stretch out the rad and just like whisper
Rad.
Red.
it. Yes, in the way that like I guess that is this sort of double fine injection of like quirky weirdness.
Yeah.
In addition to like the colorful cast of people that are in your little home base, but. That, yeah, it did kind of shock me the first time, and then I was like, actually, I really like this guy.
Yeah, he totally grew on me.
I kind of hope that there is some lore tie in there. The lore layer in this game is pretty slight. You find these like statues or towers that just drop a little 80s reference on you and send you on your way. So I don't know. Caden, how'd you feel about the announcer man?
I liked him. He's like he's this kind of like overseer, and he narrates the intro, and he's this like gas mask kind of weird dude who ushers you into every run, and he's like kind of like the elder.
That's him? That's his
That's
voice?
him.
Yeah.
Oh, I just thought it was some guy. Okay, that makes sense.
No, he is a character.
He's awesome. I like him. He's really weird and kind of quirky, and a lot of the personality of the game comes from him just doing these little tiny quips as you make your way along. And he also drops lore randomly just throughout the game as you play when you unlock these big towers and stuff too.
I like him. He wasn't obnoxious or anything, and there are parts of this game that remind me of Bastion. Like some of the controls, some of the way that it looks, and then some of the announcement stuff too. Obviously very different vibes.
Yeah.
But there are just like layers of
I see
the
what you mean.
aesthetic appeal of that game that I feel carry over to the aesthetic appeal of Rad.
It's also, I mean, even mechanically, it is a very melee roll, range
Yeah, and if
focused
you
kind
have
of
range,
game.
it's like pointing like the same way you did in Bastion. There are just some odd similarities there.
Sure, yeah. So, you know, typical roguelike stuff, you can grind away at it until you get an ending or get all the endings. There's also another mode, the Daily Challenge, which is
I
basically...
didn't do that.
Yeah, I tried it a couple times. Basically, they give you just a modifier and then a time limit to get as many points as you can on a leaderboard. On the one I got was Shark Mode, which means you run faster, but if you stop too long, you'll die. So it's just you run around and get as many points as you can in about 8 minutes, and then it just throws you up on a leaderboard. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, there are multiple endings. I don't know how you get to any of them yet, but I am curious to find out, which kind of, I guess, brings us to our conclusion here, which is that I'm in, man. Despite all the little like quirks and hitches and things that I kind of talked about, which is things that I would have liked to see maybe worked on a little more, I still think it's fantastically put together. It's an excellent roguelike. It is a little mechanically simplified,
Yeah, I agree.
I guess is what I would say, yeah. But I feel like I'm gonna put a good solid couple of weeks into this until I either see an ending or get so pissed, like until something fundamentally unfair happens to me and I just say no. But I kind of can't feel that happening. It feels like typical roguelike bullshit of you'll be 45 minutes in and think you're invincible until you just get distracted once and you're gone.
Yeah, it's not easy, but I don't feel like it's so unfair that I want to throw a controller at a wall while I'm playing it, basically.
Yeah, it's actually pretty smart of them to make the first stage as soft and welcoming as it is, because that makes starting in, like, it doesn't, the tone of the game is not we are going to punish you like most roguelikes are.
And when you die, you're not jumping straight back into something that's angry at you, so it's kind of pleasant for a little while.
Yeah, and the fact that like the upgrade or the progression system is linear, like you cannot play it and not unlock new stuff. That kind of helps too.
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you feel about it by the end of it?
I like it. I'm not in love with it. It really made me just want to go back and play more Dead Cells and more Enter the Gungeon. It is that introduction to roguelikes. It's okay and it's fun that way, but it's just, it feels like there's not enough for me, and there's a lot of quality of life things that other roguelikes have already done that I wish this one would have adopted. But all in all, if you're looking to start getting into roguelikes, this is a good one to start with.
So yeah, I think one of the points, Caden, you made earlier is pretty fundamental. It doesn't, to me at least, it doesn't add anything super new, but it does combine a lot of stuff, and I think certainly the presentation does actually help a lot. So I'm into it for $20. there's kind of been a roguelike hole in my heart right now. I've been playing like other games like roguelikes because I've apparently had that itch and just didn't know it needed to be scratched. So feels real good. I'm gonna put some more time into it. I'm really excited to dedicate a couple evenings to this game and really see what it has to offer. So yeah, I recommend it to anyone who likes roguelikes or has maybe been intimidated by them. This is a pretty good one to start with.
I feel like I align a little more with Lawrence than Caden, but it's nice to have multiple perspectives, and then I think it's really fun. It's very pretty. I think almost anyone can play it. It is simple. It doesn't challenge the genre or change much, but I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, baby's first roguelike.
Yeah.
Rad.
Caden holding it down for our core game, our hardcore gamers over there. Well, you got it. I recommend it. Price is right on it. It looks great, plays fun, so it's good enough for me. So thank you, Double Fine, for providing review codes, and thank you for watching another Inside Gaming review. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody. Not really. I mean, it's Borderlands. So you get your quests, you run around, you shoot mans in the head, you get guns. The guns are wacky. I think the shooting still feels as good as it did in Borderlands 2. That's one of the big things that I remember being super impressed about, especially after Borderlands 1 on PC, is just how snappy the engine felt and how good the shooting felt. That's still there, so that's great.